coordinators at CIEE, and Luke is recording this. Luke, do you want to come in and introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name's Luke Beland. I'm the manager for CIE's Teach Abroad programs. I work closely with Lauren on our Teach in Spain program and involved in our other ones as well. I'll be in the background for most of this, but helping out with the Q&A. We're excited to have you all here and to have a great group of panelists we're currently in Spain teaching. Lauren's going to walk you through the agenda, but we do have a Q&A tool on the webinar. So if you have questions either now or as we're going, feel free to just type in any questions to the Q&A. If it's a really specific question, we might reply individually or ask you to follow up by email. But we'll definitely read out a bunch of those questions for a Q&A session that everybody can hear. So really excited that you're interested and happy to be talking with these current participants.
Okay, so we're going to talk about different topics about teaching in Spain with our participants who are there now. Okay, today we'll talk about what is CIEE. We'll go over the Spain programs and do an overview of that. We'll meet some of the current participants, hear about their experiences on a few different topics. And then, as we said, we'll have a Q&A with those participants on the topics as well. So like Luke said, type your questions into the chat as we go and we'll answer as we can. So what is CIEE? We're a nonprofit that's been around for more than 74 years, helping thousands of people get a global experience, and we have programs with Teach Abroad, Study Abroad, high school, work exchanges, and more. So Luke and I, we just introduced ourselves. Luke's the Teach Abroad manager. I'm one of the coordinators. We also have Stephen, the director, and Shanice, who works on our Thailand and Korea portfolios. So the eligibility to teach in Spain is to be have native level English proficiency, be a citizen of the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or Ireland, and then also to have a bachelor's degree in any field. The program options, if you're teaching in Spain in the fall, we have a few different options. When you go, there's our regular Teach in Spain program. We have a Teach in Spain Basics program that has a few more requirements like Spanish language skills, teaching skills, and having lived abroad. We also have immersion programs 2 and 4 weeks, so you can live with a host family and do Spanish lessons before your program for a period of time that you choose. And then we also have TEFL options available with all of our programs. What's the job? The job is teaching 16 hours per week, 4 days a week. So that'd be 16 classroom hours over a 4-day work week. So you usually get Monday or Friday off. You get €1,000 monthly stipend and then placement in the region of Madrid. The role, you're placed in public schools at a primary or secondary level. You'll be an assistant and be responsible for cultural presentations, creative activities and games, working on conversational skills, and then also helping with preparing for English exams. Sometimes at bilingual schools, you could also be asked to help with art, history, science, or PE classes. So now we're going to go through and meet some of our panelists who are helping today. Okay, Alfonsina.
Hi, I'm Alfonsina. So I'm doing the Teach in Spain Basics program right now, which, like she said, requires teaching experience and a little more knowledge of the Spanish language. So I got my bachelor's from Texas Tech in English, and I got my master's in creative writing. And when I was there, I taught for 2 years in the English department at Texas Tech. And I also taught for a year at a high school in Lubbock. So that's how I got my teaching experience. I also have a minor in Spanish, and I'm Puerto Rican. That's why I have a Spanish name. But aside from that, I love reading, cooking, and traveling. Madrid is a great place to travel. If you like to travel, it's really cheap to travel from here. So yeah, that's me.
Our next panelist, Adam.
Hi guys, I'm Adam Santana. I began doing the Teach in Spain fall 2020, and this is my second year here in 2021. So it was kind of a strange year last year with the COVID restrictions. It's going much better this year. We have full classrooms. There still are restrictions with face masks, and we do keep the windows open this year. So it's a bit cold in the classroom. But a little bit more about me. I studied abroad in Valencia, Spain in the spring of 2019. I was born and raised in Wayne, New Jersey. I'm also Puerto Rican, so that's where I got my last name from, my last name Santana. I graduated from Rutgers University, New Brunswick, where I studied communications and public relations. I minored in entrepreneurship, and I did take Spanish, a bunch of Spanish classes, but I didn't quite get the minor. I love volleyball. I'm here in Madrid. I play for a men's league. We're federado, which means we travel around the Comunidad of Madrid. So we play a bunch of other teams. That was really fun and a big part of my experience here. I love menswear. I love to snowboard. So this year with less travel restrictions, I'm hoping to snowboard at some of the popular mountains in the Pirineos. I love to travel and I love staying creative. I teach at a vocational high school in Alcobendas, which is about a 45-minute metro ride from my home in the center. So it's quite a different experience at the school too, because my students are on the older side. So they're as young as 16, but I also have students that are as old as they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, and they're there to learn a trade. So yeah.
Carly.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Cashion, and I'm a first-year assistant here in Madrid. I'm originally from Juneau, Alaska, but I just graduated with my undergrad this spring from the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. Coming to Madrid for me was a whole new adventure because in my undergrad, I actually studied business and German. And so this was my first time learning Spanish, and I wanted to just see if teaching was for me. But I originally became familiar with CIE because I studied abroad in Berlin with CIE in the summer of 2019. And then I also studied abroad in Freiburg, Germany during the spring of 2020, which we know with COVID was an interesting adventure. But I really felt very comfortable with CIE and I decided to come to Madrid with them. Like I mentioned, I participated in the TEFL and the 4-week immersion program. So since I didn't have much of a Spanish background, I was really interested in being fully immersed with a family to get the Spanish culture, as well as to learn the language. So I did 4 weeks of Spanish courses, and I've actually continued on at my language institute since the start, and I'm really loving that program. Like Adam, I also teach at a school that has a lot of vocational. My school is both secondary and vocational. So I work with students from the ages of 11 to 40, 50-year-olds. So it's a big difference. And I'm really lucky my school is pretty much on the center of Madrid. So it's not too long of a commute, but it's very enjoyable because you meet so many different assistants here with different backgrounds. But some things I really love to do, I'm a massive foodie. So Madrid has been an excellent place for that. And I also really love to travel and read, and I'm just enjoying my time here in Madrid.
Thank you. Amani, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can
Awesome. Thank you. Yep, can hear you.
Can you see me too? I don't know.
Yes, you're good.
Hi, my name is Imani. I'm in the regular Teach in Spain program through CIE. It's my first year teaching here in Madrid, and yeah, I actually studied abroad in Havana, Cuba in the spring of 2020 through CIE actually, but I had to come back just as Carly said because of COVID, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of re-immerse myself in another Spanish-speaking culture for a longer period of time. As I said, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, so living in a big city like Madrid right now seems like honestly very familiar. It's there are a lot of similarities. I graduated from the University of Richmond, where I studied visual media arts, and I minored in Latin American and Iberian studies. So that's how I have my Spanish background. For hobbies, I like to paint, draw. When I was in LA, I would bike a lot and be very active. And here I try to incorporate that the same, because you can rent out electric bikes here, which I've been taking advantage of, and it's very fun to just use that and see the city. I currently teach at a primary school, which is called, whose name is the Marguerite School in Parla. I teach 4th grade, and I absolutely adore them. And the entire school is bilingual, so it's been a very fun and interesting time talking to like 1st graders and 2nd graders, and all of them in English, and seeing the different levels. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And Amira, if she's here. So Amira just told me she might be coming a little late because she got a last-minute appointment to get her TIA, which is something associated with the visa and residency. So she might come in midway through, but Amira is another participant on this program, 2021. She is teaching in Spain as well. So we'll see if she comes in a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to go through some of the topics with our panelists. We'll go through saving and budgeting, housing, tutoring, teaching, and transportation. So we'll start with the saving and budgeting topic. And Amani, if you want to chime in on your experience, I'll let you speak for a little bit, and then we'll go from Amani, then Carly, and then Alfonsina.
Yes, of course. So I'm going to be honest. So budgeting is one of the most important things that you have to do while you're here. You get paid a stipend of $1,000 a month, but you get paid once a month. So that mean that for, at least for me, we get paid every, I think on the 30th of every month. So I think one of the biggest things that I do to budget is I kind of put myself on a weekly an allowance, if you will, after having subtracted my rent, things like electricity and Wi-Fi, depending on your living situation. Once you split that up between 4 weeks, you'll have enough to be more flexible, to do all the fun things, like visit museums, go out to eat. But it is important that you keep track of that. And I believe that if you do this program, they give you a budgeting sheet where you can map it all out for the month, which has been very helpful. Another thing, I think that one of the other panelists will talk about is that another way to budget is honestly to find a second income, such as tutoring. They'll talk about this more, but there's plenty of opportunities to do private tutoring, and it can help you get a little bit more money so that you can have money to travel, to do all the fun things that you want to do. Yeah.
Carly?
Yeah, so following up on Mani, I completely agree that budgeting is one of the most critical elements, because there's so many different goals and things we all want to do here in Madrid, and keeping your costs in line is really important. I think something I made very clear when I came into this program was setting my goals for the year and how you want to treat this. Is it a career, exploration program? Is it more of a self-exploration? I really took it on as I wanted to improve on myself and, spend just a time exploring and getting to know a lot of people. So with that goal, I kind of took it as more of a gap year and made sure that I came with a lot of savings to recognize that I wanted to do a lot of traveling. Now that mostly COVID restrictions are loosening up, except you guys have probably seen the news, some restrictions are coming back into place, but I've been able to travel a lot this fall. So I made sure that that was a part of my budget. Like Amani mentioned, we get $1,000 stipend every month. So I think first, always deducting your rent, and even when we'll talk about this in housing, but making sure you understand how much you're willing to pay for your rent each month, because that will be your largest expense while you're here. And then I also, with that mentality of giving myself kind of a weekly allowance, I always try to cut where I can easily cut. So, thinking about having friends over instead of going out, because eating out here, while some places can be relatively affordable, it can really add up. So keeping those costs in mind. I also think one thing just to put on your radar if you do end up going for the program is to mind the upfront costs that come with the program. So settling in can be quite pricey, which, the unexpected costs that you don't think about, getting situated with your transportation card, getting your apartment situated, the costs of while you're trying to find housing can be also expensive. So I think saving was really the mode that I took on coming before, which gave me a little bit more of a leisure attitude once I got here. One thing also is that we don't get paid for the first time until the end of October. So making sure that you are coming over with enough money to sustain your first month of rent, I think was critical. And I think just having an idea that what your priorities are with your spending. Something I use is the app called Mint, which I recommend. Something I found unique in Spain is it's very card heavy, so you can pay with most things with your card. Mint keeps track of all of your spending, putting it into different categories, which I think has been really important for me to have that visual to make sure I'm not overspending and still have enough money to travel and do the things I like. So would really recommend just having a way before you come that helps you keep all of your expenses in line. So that's my recommendations.
Thank you. And Alfonsina.
Okay, so in order to be to set a budget and be able to stick to your budget, I think you have to think of it in two different categories. So when you get to Spain, do you want to live in a really cool area, see a lot of Madrid and stay in Madrid a lot and get to know the city? Or do you want to live in a cheaper area so you can travel a lot? Obviously, they're not mutually exclusive. So you can definitely spend a lot of time in Madrid if you live outside of Madrid because of the transportation cards, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But I think that's a really important thing to decide before you get here. So I'm going to go ahead and break down my monthly spending so that you kind of get an idea. So when I came here, I came with my husband, who is my roommate, but we'll pretend he's not my husband. Okay, we'll talk about it like it's just a random roommate. Okay, so we decided that we didn't want to spend more than $350 per person a month. So our rent is $700 a month. For me, it's $350. Electricity here is really expensive, so it could be anywhere between $50 and $75 a month. Our phone, if you have a roommate, you can do a plan with them. So our plan together is 60 euros for 2 lines. What is it? It's 2 lines, Wi-Fi, TV, and roaming in other countries. So for me, it's just 30 a month. For him, it's 30 a month. And then I've budgeted out $50 a week for me on groceries and eating out. And then 38 euros a month for me for traveling. So that comes out to 668 euros, which leaves me by myself 332 for traveling, for weekend trips, things like that, because I've already budgeted. I'm going to have 50 a week to eat out in Spain, go to museums, in Madrid, whatever, which is 200 a month, right? So with budgeting, consider right now, am I going to have big savings when I get there that I'll be able to dip into that to go travel outside of Spain? And maybe I can live in a more expensive apartment, or will I not have a lot of savings to where I'll really have to have a cheaper apartment so that I can use my whatever's left over of my 1,000 euros to go travel? Because traveling absolutely is possible with the 1,000 euros if you're smart about what am I spending on food and on my rent.
Can I add something very quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so she just mentioned something that I just wanted to emphasize. I know that when I first came here, I was worried about how the food costs, that chipping into my budget. But as she said, she allocated 50, I think, a week to, or yeah, a 50 a week or 30 a week for groceries. It is very possible. If you, I'm coming from Los Angeles, and when I first heard that, I was 30 to 50 a week for groceries. It was kind of unrealistic, but it is very possible. I think it's, as all the panelists have said, it's just about making the right choices, and you can live comfortably with the stipend given. But yeah, groceries are very cheap.
Thank you. Luke, do you want to look at the Q&A and we can see if we can get some of those answered for this category?
Sure thing. So limiting things to questions about budgeting. One question, which is good to start with, is what would the panelists recommend in terms of how much savings to have available when you first fly to Madrid?
Do we answer out loud or type it?
You can answer.
Oh yeah, go ahead and answer out loud, and if we talk over each other, that's okay.
Okay,
We're
so
all family.
he recommends 2,000, right?
2000, yep.
Okay, I would say probably for me, like comfortably, I had more than 2,000, and I'm so happy I did, because when I moved into my apartment, it was furnished, but there were no like towels, linens, no cups, plates, cookware, silverware, anything like that. And those are a lot of like hidden costs that I hadn't considered, that I had to dip into my savings, and it really sucked. And also I didn't know about agency fees. So when you sign your lease, you might, and I'll talk about this in housing later, but I'll just say it now. If your landlord used an agent, then you'll have to pay an agency fee, which is 1 month, equivalent of 1 month, and it's not refundable. So our rent was 700. We had to pay the agent 700 euros that we're not getting back. And so there are things like that that kind of just add up. So to be safe, like as much as you can, no less than 2,000 for sure though.
Definitely. Okay, I'll let you guys know how much I brought over. So I was only planning, I hope you guys can hear me okay. I was only planning on doing the program for 1 year. So I saved a bunch during the pandemic. I was still working because I was working at a family restaurant. And I decided to bring almost an extra grand over for each month that I was here, just under that. But again, last year I was living very differently than I am this year. I was trying to travel more. I was spending money out eating more, like doing shopping, vintage shopping and whatnot. And this year I had maybe half of the savings, even less than what I did last year. And like they were saying before, with budgeting and just kind of, yeah, allocating your money to the right things, it's definitely possible to live off of the 1,000 euro stipend. And in a bit, I'll go over private tutoring, which is something that can also help as well.
I think for me, when I was budgeting and when I was saving up before coming to Spain, I think I saved up around like 6,000 just to be comfortable. And it definitely helped because, as one of the other panelists mentioned, not only will you have to pay you might have to pay agency fees, depending on the place you get. They might ask for up from 1 to 3 months worth of rent. So the first month can be like 3 months worth of rent on top of the agency fee, which can be very pricey. Like, for example, I have a friend who had to pay around 3,000 for the first time she was here. And obviously, having not been paid yet through CIE or through your school, all of that money came from her savings. Granted, she chose to live in a more expensive area, so her bill was a lot more expensive. But I would say definitely in between like 3,000, like 2,000, 3,000 would be a good amount to come with.
All right, another question, and we've gotten this before as well, just with our email correspondence. A lot of people are concerned. They've heard accounts of teaching assistants who are paid late, maybe months late. I know that that's not been an issue for us generally in the Madrid program. Potentially, it could be an issue with other provinces and other programs. But just a quick poll of the panelists: have your stipend checks always come on time?
Yes, one comment I have is after your first month of payment, you do have to go into your school and sign a piece of paper just so that you can acknowledge that the payment was received. And everyone that I've been in communication with, like, clearly signed that paper and had their checks running either between like the 25th of like that month to like the first 5 days within the new month. So I've not heard from anyone, nor has it been my experience of having any late payments. And my school was very clear about communication on that every single day of the last month is when I would get paid. So I have not had that issue.
Yeah. So in my
Hi, I
case,
hope you guys can. Oh, go ahead.
you're good, Amira.
Amira, is
Oh,
that
okay. Yeah. Hi.
Amira.
awesome? Thank you.
It's me. It's Amira. Hi. Sorry to join a little bit late. I was actually picking up my Tia, but we can talk about that another time. I would say, yeah, I've heard of people getting paid late in other provinces, but I haven't heard of it in Madrid. And like the previous panelist said, you sign a paper. For us, we sign it at the end of every month. And the first every month I've gotten my paycheck on time. So I think it might be kind of dependent on what school you're at or what province you're in, but I haven't heard of anyone here in Madrid who's been paid substantially late. In fact, some of my friends get paid early, which is nice.
All right, guys, quickly, I just want to chime in. So I might be the oddball out, but last year I did have to tell my school that I needed to be paid on time because my landlord requires that I pay my rent within the first 3 to 5 days. And for the most part, my school was paying me on time, either by the first or within the first 5 days. But it just so happened that occasionally they would pay me about like 8 days in, 10 days in to the month. And my landlord was okay with it, but just to avoid that, I talked to the secretary and they got it figured out and they haven't been late since. So yeah. If you do run into a problem, just be vocal about it and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Welcome, Amira. Let's do one more question on budgeting and we'll move on to the next section. So I can kind of answer this question a little bit. Are people allowed to have 2 jobs? Technically, folks aren't allowed to take a formal second job because they're there on a student visa. Private tutoring is extremely common and totally okay, and we're going to talk some more about that in a separate chapter here. Any of the panelists have tips or other comments about sort of second jobs or other ways to get income aside from just tutoring?
Hi, it's Amira again. I actually, I don't know if this is necessarily allowed, but I still work kind of freelance at an architecture firm in Philadelphia at home. So sometimes I pick up a few hours here and there remotely after my school day when I need a little bit of extra cash, and it helps out, as well as I actually babysit. I don't do private tutoring, but there's a few ways that you can make extra cash here, or if this is not allowed and if this is bad advice, please let me know. Yeah, I actually work remotely from time to time in the States.
Yeah, it's 2021. I think you're far from the only person. So I think that's just part of reality, is that people can bring
Yeah.
jobs with them around the world to some extent. So no issues from here. Go ahead, Imani.
So I want to know if any of you guys are dual citizens. I have a friend who is Greek American, so she can technically get a second job here because she has citizenship within another country. But I feel like that's the only way you can get an actual like part-time job. But I was going to say the same thing about babysitting. If you can do any like special skills, I know that sounds weird, but like for me, I braid hair, like so I feel like it's just about doing more freelance work that fit your talents, as well as just connecting with other people in CIE to see if there are other opportunities like tutoring and stuff like that. But like for me, I braid hair and yeah, stuff like that. Very simple.
Guys, really quick, I'll be talking about tutoring in just a bit, But another way that I make some side money is by promoting for events at bars and clubs. So a teammate of mine, I told you guys earlier, I'm playing on a men's volleyball team. He's in charge of like public relations and marketing for an organization that throws events at the bars and clubs in the neighborhood of Chueca. So he has me just get a bunch of my friends and university students to attend, and I get paid a little bit cash. So I'm not sure how legal it is, but it's a good way to make some side money.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Lauren, do you want to bring us to the next section?
Yeah, we're going to move on for now. Next is, okay, housing. I didn't skip one. Okay, housing. So housing, we'll have Carly start with that and just go ahead, Carly.
Yeah, hi. So a few things I mentioned about housing that I'll also mention, but honestly, I think, to be honest, housing was definitely my largest stressor coming here. I was fortunate I came in the August 30th arrival group, so I had a little bit of time to look it out. But I think a big thing is deciding if you want to find roommates once you're here in Spain, or if you want to stay with fellow Americans from CIE. I decided on the route to find other CIE members. So I connected with 2 other women through the CIE Facebook group and group chats, and we chatted over the summer. One thing that I think is a benefit of this is that you get clear communication from the beginning and kind of set your goals, your budgets, your desires for housing before you get here to Madrid, because not sugarcoat it, but it is very competitive, the housing, at least this fall when I was here. Places are going up and, being taken down quite quickly. And so I really appreciated having 2 people to go in with it. And while we were looking at places, we were very clear on our budgets, on what we desired. A big thing is just like what kind of room spaces you want. Lighting areas are a big thing. And so my next point is setting areas. I've personally found people that were commuting in similar directions as I was, which allowed us to be really clear about the neighborhoods we were interested in, because we pretty much just looked at the metro map. But I think it's important to pick a few neighborhoods that for commutes would work well for you. I also decided I wanted to live in the center of Madrid, and many people are placed throughout the Comunidad, so you might be farther. And I have plenty of friends who decided to live outside the city center. So I think just making these decisions before you arrive to Madrid can be helpful in guiding the process, because I think once you kind of get here, I found it really helpful just to be kind of like boots on the ground, ready to start looking and figuring out what you want. Each area of Madrid has quite a different feel. I really enjoyed using all of the assistant Facebook groups to learn more about the neighborhoods. And I think a big thing is noise. If you live a little bit closer into the centro, it's going to be a little bit louder. So we actually decided to live a little bit farther out in Atocha, which is still in the center, but a little farther out because of the noise level. But as they're mentioning, with moving forward, there's a lot of different ways to find apartments here. I only used Idealista. That was my only experience, but I had friends who, went through like Spot a Home or other groups to live with Spaniards or other international students. But with Idealista, one thing I recommend, since I was not a Spanish speaker, is really having a blurb written in Spanish was critical, and having a way to either use Google Translate or a friend to communicate with your landlords in Spanish. I found that was a lot more of an effective rate in getting responses. And then if you have roommates that you've had clear communication with, once you tour, apartments, you can be pretty quick on your feet. For my place, we had to give an answer within 12 hours. So that was the best strategy of already having this communication with my roommates. Was we were able to make a very quick decision. And I also found myself in a situation with like an agency fee. So I was very grateful that I brought quite a bit of savings, because I had to pay my agency fee, my first month of rent, as well as a deposit, that like a safety deposit that we will receive at the end. But in terms, CIE sets you really well to get an apartment with your financial means letter, your contract. Those 2 things are the critical ways to get apartments. But yeah, that's kind of my experience. But I'll pass the mic over.
Okay, so I think I kind of had like a very easy apartment hunting experience, which I don't think is the norm. So I got here on the 27th, which was the day that the orientation started. And I started looking at places on Idealista. So like Carly said, you can also use Photocasa, what is it? Yeah, Photocasa or Spot a Home. I just found Idealista to be a lot easier for me. But I saw 3 apartments that I really, really liked. And in the span of like the first day that I was here, 2 of them were gone. So I went with like the last one, which was not my favorite, which is where I now live and I love it. But I messaged the landlord on the 27th. I went and I saw it on the 28th. And on the 29th, I signed my lease. We paid 2 months rent, security deposit, the first month's rent, and the agency fee. So that was a lot of money up front. Obviously I split it with another person. So keep in mind, you'll be splitting that cost with someone else. But yeah, I think the really important thing for having like a smooth transition into finding an apartment is to be looking at places before you get here. So what are the areas that you want to live in, right? So cool areas, if you want to spend a lot of money and live in like an amazing place, would be Barrio de la Latina is really amazing. Lavapiés is cool. Malasaña, really fun places, but they tend to be more expensive. If you want to live in the centro, but not really in the center and spend a little bit less, like Carly said, Atocha, Puerta del Ángel, I love. It's right next to Casa de Campo, which is a huge, huge park, and you can see like the palace from there. But yeah, so before you get here, look at what areas do you want to live in? What is your budget? And where is your school? So get the Metro Madrid app, and from there you can plan out, okay, if I were to live in Puerta del Ángel and my school is in whatever area, how long would it take me with the Metro to get there? Because maybe it feels like it's really far away, but in reality, it would be like a 20-minute commute using the Metro, okay? So that's my biggest tip, is look in advance at the neighborhoods and figure out what your commute would be that way. But yeah, also keep in mind, you might have to stay in an Airbnb the first few days that you're here. So also budget for that.
Yeah, sorry, can I just pop back? That was, I think, a critical point. I was really fortunate that one thing I loved about the 4-week immersion program was it gave me 4 weeks of buffer time with housing figured out. But I definitely had, most of my friends needed, you know, a week or 2 in an Airbnb. So I really recommend budgeting for that. And then also, I think we mentioned it earlier about having our places furnished or unfurnished. I came with a place that was, I would say, semi-furnished is the best way to put it. It was like new furniture in the box. I would say most of the apartments I toured were in that same room, like same area of kind of having some furniture, but would still need to, you know, get things for the kitchen, get your bedding and whatnot. So that's something I really recommend with budgeting that I did not take into a consideration before coming, was that getting settled into your apartment might take a few days after your orientation visit, and it might also take a little bit extra costs to get your place ready for you to live in.
I've also heard of people who had really good luck with long stay Airbnb experiences. And I think, Amira, right? I think you're in a long stay Airbnb, if I'm correct.
Yes, you're correct. I'm actually living in a long stay Airbnb. So my situation's a bit different when it comes to living. And I studied abroad in Rome, and I did the same thing there. And I really enjoyed the experience. I felt very secure. And so I have, my best friend is coming with CIE's short-term program in January. So from when I arrived in September until now, I booked a long stay Airbnb. It's just me living there. I love it. I love my apartment. I'm like so obsessed with it. I don't want to leave. But yeah, I luckily didn't have to deal with some of the things you guys have been talking about with landlords and paying sort of big bulk prices. However, because it's an Airbnb, it's not, you know, a typical rent situation. I'm not paying monthly. I instead pay in bulk. It's a little bit more expensive, but I budgeted for that. And I'm really happy with my living situation, but I will be living somewhere a little bit more traditional come January when my friend arrives.
And I would also add that, like, you'll have a place to stay when you first get here, because in your CIE fee, it's there's a hotel stay for the orientation. So that's where I was staying when I was apartment hunting. So I didn't have to stay in an Airbnb because I had like the hotel that I stayed in. which makes it that makes it easier for sure.
Luke, do you want to see what kind of questions we have?
Sure thing. Let's start with roughly how long does it take to find housing? Experiences are going to vary a bit, but from what the panelists experience and what they've heard from friends, what's a quick housing search look like? What's a lengthy one look like, and what would they guess is the average?
Yeah, I was also in a similar boat. It took me about 3 days once I started actively looking, sending messages to landlords within signing my contract. So ours was a pretty short process. I think if you know your budget, you know like what you need in a place, and you know the areas you want to be in, you can find a place relatively quickly. I think also depending on when you came, I arrived and got an apartment halfway through September. So I don't know if anyone else was in the later September arrival groups, but I don't know if you felt like it was more competitive, but it definitely is a competitive nature. So you want to be able to make quick decisions. I will say it definitely is, it really ebbs and flows. I had a few friends, it took them, 3 weeks to find an apartment, but I would say on average, most people I know, it took them between 4 and 5 days of active hunting, looking at places to then sign their apartment. But anyone else have a different experience?
I like to say for me, it also took me about like 4 to 5 days to find an apartment, but that was because I came in the first week of September. I do personally know some people who arrived in mid to late October and actually had to leave because they couldn't find housing. So obviously those are two very distinct realities. And I think the biggest thing you can do to prevent that from happening is just looking in advance, contacting landlords in advance, but don't settle on anything until you see it in person. But starting the process in advance can help you so much, and it can honestly save you a lot of money. But for me, it only took, like 4 days, 4 or 5 days.
I want to chime in on this too, because as I had an Airbnb, I knew where I was going to live before I arrived, so I didn't have to deal with that. However, all the rest of my friends who I met at the hotel actually that first week, most of them were able to find an apartment within that very first week or 2 weeks. However, I know 2 people actually that found an apartment that first week and then moved because, they had a problem with their roommates or a problem with the apartment itself, what have you, and then found another apartment and have already moved since being here. So it is like competitive, you could say, especially depending on when and what time of year you arrive, but it's very possible and very doable to arrive and find a place within a week or a few weeks, and apparently even less than a week.
One thing I should also add is that I chose to just join an open room. So I didn't come here with roommates planned. I didn't have anything planned. I just went on Idealista and Body, and I just looked up whatever apartment was having that had an open room, and I ended up loving my decision. And because of that, it's fully furnished. There wasn't any problems with landlords and stuff like that because you're usually contacting the roommates themselves. But that could be a good consideration in just looking for empty rooms. That can give you more options than if you're looking for a completely empty apartment.
Here's a question for the panelists. Certainly, it's helpful to be browsing in advance to start to learn about what kinds of apartments are available at what prices and what neighborhoods. We generally advise not to put down a deposit until you've visited the place in person, just to protect yourself from fraud or scams. So that does mean that it's hard to, in many cases, hard to pin down the exact apartment really far in advance. Airbnb may be an exception to that, since that's a little bit more of a reliable platform. Any participants want to comment on that question of sort of options for pinning down housing even before you arrive?
Yeah, just one point. I had some friends use Spot a Home, which I can drop a link shortly, which is kind of more of an agency that helps you find an apartment that's been vetted and approved by them. So there's less likelihood of there being a scam or fraud. And a lot of people enjoyed it. It does come with some fees, but it definitely, for my friends who used it, gave them a little bit more peace of mind, especially if they had roommates or friends they were coming with. One thing though, I do recommend like looking ahead and seeing what kind of areas are available, but I would definitely like keep in mind that usually if you look more than 5 days in advance, they won't be on the platform afterwards. Most apartments I saw were on platforms like within 1 to 2 to 3 days they were gone. So I think just knowing if you're looking ahead of schedule, I definitely wouldn't recommend putting a deposit down because a lot of the pictures, especially on Idealista, can be a little bit misleading. And I think it's also important to get to know your neighborhoods. That was something that was critical for me, is even though I knew some areas I wanted to be in, making sure that when I got here, I actually visually saw it, understood the layout, understood like it's where it was located. So I'd recommend maybe looking, but yeah, overall wouldn't recommend trying to do the apartment search before you get here, just because there's a lot of unknowns in uncertain situations.
Okay, another question for the panel. How many roommates is typical? For the types of apartments that are available in Madrid, how many roommates do you and your friends have?
I've seen a lot of like apartments with 3 people living in them, and on the CIE Facebook page that participants have to be accepted into. So if you're in CIE, you'll get in that too. A lot of people will post like, my friend and I signed a lease for this apartment. Does anybody want to also join the lease for us? We have a room available. It's this much. Electricity usually costs this much. So it's another way to find apartments. It's not my favorite way because then it's other people who are like, it's $500 a month and that might not be your budget. But yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people living with 2 other roommates.
Yeah, so I live with 3 other roommates. So in total, oh, sorry, Monty. So in total, we are 4 of us. There is a chance that you could find places for cheaper in the center, but a lot of times the cheaper places you'll tend to have more roommates. For example, there's a lot of Erasmus students here in the Erasmus housing, which are the kids in Europe at university who are studying here in Spain. I had a friend who was paying $350, $320 a month, but he was living with 11 other people. Personally, I didn't want that. But definitely if you're on a budget and you do want to be in the center, there's options.
Yeah, I was basically gonna say the exact same thing. I know that when I was looking for empty rooms to join or to rent, a lot of them would be like, oh, 6 to 11 roommates, and that's not an ideal situation. But for me, I ended up finding a place that only had 2 people living here. So just as the other panelists have said, it's really easy to find a place that will accommodate at least like 3 to 4 people living in the apartment.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions. I'm just going to be typing responses to help us, catch back some time. Lauren, do you want to bring us to the next section?
Yep. Let's go on to. So private tutoring, and Adam will go over this. I know we kind of talked about it briefly, but go for it, Adam.
Awesome, guys. So let's talk a little bit about private tutoring. So I'm going to tell you guys about my experience and some of the experiences my friends have had. So right now I have 3 students. So I charge 18 to 20 an hour, depending on the type of class it's going to be. One of my students, Maria, she works for the Corte Inglés, which is kind of like the Macy's of Spain. She's working in the buying department, and she was looking for a class that is English for business. Her English is at about a B1 level. And the first class we had, it was pretty much me getting to know her, assessing her level of English. And it was about at a B1 level. So what does a typical class look like with her? We go over email writing. She'll even show me some of her work emails that she like wasn't sure about, or some of the words that she was using. She wanted to know if she's using them correctly. We go over phone calls. We go over business vocabulary. And as far as resources go, at first I was really concerned about where can I find resources for these private classes. I studied business at school, so a lot of education majors are prepared and they know how to lesson plan. And honestly, I wouldn't worry about that at all, because again, you're going to be in school, so you'll kind of get into the flow of what it is to teach. As far as that goes, I use islcollective.com, auxiliaresdeconversacion.com, and I honestly use a lot of YouTube videos. I reuse a lot of my classwork. Again, I told you guys I work at a vocational high school, and at that vocational high school, I'm in the English department, but I'm working with the finance kids, the business administration kids, comercio, and international commerce kids. Students, I'm sorry. So I reuse a lot of the things we do in those classes with my private class. Again, and I have another 2 students. I also help a 9-year-old, and that class, the way it goes, it's mostly me helping him with his homework. He's at a bilingual school, so he gets assigned homework in English, in like subjects like science and history. But because again, he's a 9-year-old, the level I can handle it. And then we'll go over schoolwork, and I'll provide him some like vocab, and we'll play games together. And that's like what the parents were looking for. I think it's important to make clear what the expectations are of the private class. Personally, I am not an expert in grammar. I did not study English, but at a lower level, I can get by, right? I have some friends who do strictly conversation class. So, and they're charging about the same 15 to 20 euros an hour. I have one friend who someone's paying her 20 euros an hour, literally just to sit down and speak with her in English. So that, again, don't be afraid to reach out for classes, even if you only are capable or only want to do conversation classes. People are looking for that. My 3rd student is actually a part of the cleaning staff at my school. She's a Brazilian lady, an awesome lady that we talk in between classes. And one day she was like, I would love to take classes. Would you mind tutoring me? And I was like, of course. So I asked what her expectations were. And again, she just wanted conversation classes. Because she works at my school and it's really convenient for me, I just stay an extra hour at school. We'll grab a coffee or something to drink after school. I only charge her 15 euros an hour because there's not much preparation that goes into that. Let's see. So how to get classes? You might be wondering, where can you find these private classes? A lot of it, at least in my situation, has been through word of mouth and by being proactive. So I literally just hung up a sign. I printed out a bunch of flyers basically with my name saying I was a native speaker. I gave them my email. I said, hey, I'm offering private tutoring classes conversationally. I can help with homework, and to email me and we can be in touch. And I got a bunch of emails. I decided that maybe 3 to 6 private classes a week would be my maximum. Last year, I had a bunch of savings and I was comfortable not having privates, but this year to supplement that, I am tutoring. Again, a way to get classes by speaking with your teachers. The teachers at your school are going to want to help you. The teachers at my school, they've helped me a lot. They talk to their friends, their family friends. So Maria, my one student who does business for English, is the English director's niece of my school. And she's also had people reach out to me, friends of hers that play on the same paddle like team or club. And obviously you can always reach out to your students and you can hang flyers. I hung flyers in coffee shops near the metro. And that was a good way to kind of get the word out that I'm looking for private classes. And let's see. I also had one friend who does this online sort of tutoring back in the States. And that I'm not quite sure the name of it. I can find out and try and drop it in the chat. But basically, he's paired with families and you get a profile of them beforehand. And I think he gets paid 15 American dollars an hour for that. And yeah, that's That's my experience on private tutoring.
Thank you. Luke, did anything come up in the chat or in the Q&A?
Sure. We'll start with a good question. I think it's good for both tutoring and even for classroom teaching as well. How do you tutor English or serve as an assistant teacher if you don't know any Spanish? What are some tips or approaches to that?
Ooh, that's a good one. Fortunately, I do speak Spanish, and in my situation, it has helped me a lot because depending on the level of my students, some of my classes, the level of English is very high. So there's not many times where I don't feel there's not many times that I'm misunderstood. But again, there are classes that I have that the level is a lot lower, and I wouldn't be too scared about this because the teacher will chime in. So if the students aren't understanding the lesson, the teacher is there. Again, you're there as support. So the teacher will chime in and explain it maybe to them in Spanish, and then it reinforces what you're doing and they'll understand it. I know a lot of schools don't want people, the auxiliares, speaking any Spanish. So that might be the case for most participants, but at least at my school, they know that in some of my classes, the level is so low of English that they are okay with me kind of rephrasing something or re-going over the directions in Spanish. But I don't know how the other participants' experiences are.
Yeah, I would love to chime in on that as someone who has never learned Spanish before coming to Madrid. It was definitely probably the thing I felt the most nervous about. And honestly, I think I looked out my first few weeks here during my Spanish courses. My professor made it very clear that he would not speak any English with us. And I realized how much more that intensified my desire to learn Spanish. And so I kind of adopted that mentality with my students as language assistants. They don't prefer us to speak any Spanish with the students, but I made it very clear to all my students that in reality, I didn't speak any Spanish. And I think once you set that bar, the students become a lot more comfortable miming and using extra forms to get their points across and to let you know if they're not understanding, which I think honestly aids a lot in their learning process. And like Adam mentioned, your co-teacher is always willing to help. So I always go with my students how we phrase it if they have a question on how they need to gain information about how to ask something in English. And then I always turn it over to my teacher just to set that boundary with my students that I'm not there to speak Spanish with them, mostly because I don't know enough Spanish yet. But I definitely, if it's one of your worries, I've felt very comfortable with it and navigating that space while making sure my students were still gaining and receiving the tools they needed when they weren't in places of understanding. So I hope that helps.
I can also add in on this. I similarly have never properly learned Spanish, but I grew up around a lot of Spanish people and always have sort of heard it in my life. But it was kind of my biggest nerve-wracking part of coming here was, God, am I going to be able to do this without knowing Spanish? But I have to say it works really well. And it actually, I know that we're here to teach the kids, but I've learned so much Spanish by teaching them and by trying to figure out what they're saying. I work with infantile, so I work with kids as young as 4 years old. And because, their level of Spanish is pretty low because they're so young, I'm learning so much with them. And with the student that I babysit, I only speak to him in English. And I find that they, especially in the bilingual schools, can understand so much English. Even if they can't communicate back to you in English, they can understand pretty well. So I would say that it isn't that big of a concern, although I understand why it is a little nerve-wracking. But once you get here, you'll start picking up on things so quickly.
Okay, I think we may, Lauren, what do you think about jumping right into the teaching section, talking about teaching in the classrooms, since it's kind of a related topic?
We can go to teaching, which I think is next. So kind of go with that. So Amani, Alfonsina, and Amira, we could just go in order, but if Amani, you want to go first? And I know we just kind of covered that with a little bit on that last one as well.
Yeah, I can start. So I teach at a primary school. So it goes from infantil to about, I think, 6th grade, and it's bilingual. So what that means is that I believe that, for example, for 4th grade, they have 3 classes that are completely taught in English, or at least majority in English. I'm there to help with obviously their English class, but also their science class. And some of my responsibilities include reading passages so they can hear my pronunciation of things, running the oral exams that they have, and also just working one-to-one, one-on-one, while the teacher might be teaching the whole class. I might pull a kid aside so we can go over the past tense or whatever the class might be learning at the time. In terms of prep time, I, to be honest, don't have that much prep because my teachers usually tell me day of what I'm going to be doing or what they need from me. And that's just my personal situation. I know that other TAs have a much more hand-on and self-directed role in the class. So they might have to have 30 minutes of prep time before school every day or something like that. But for me, I honestly have no prep time. The dress code was honestly very surprising to me, and I feel like a lot of the panelists will agree. In general, I would feel like at least for teachers, it's much more relaxed than how you would see in the US typically. A lot of jeans, hoodies, sweaters, and stuff like that, and rather than like business casual, which was what I was used to. But it's very comfortable, and I honestly like that. Me personally, in terms of how many teachers I work with 2 teachers. Again, I work with 4th grade, 4 classes, and it's split into 2 and 2. 2 classes with one teacher and 2 classes with the other teachers. I've had the privilege of getting along with them very well, and they're honestly the sweetest people I have met in a long time. But I think that's one of the biggest things that has helped me in my teaching experiences is developing a open and communicative relationship with the people you're going to be teaching with. So whatever concerns you might have for the lesson plan, or in the future if you need to take a day off or whatever, having that kind of open communication makes the whole experience so much better. And as I think Carla, I believe, talked about when we were about the struggle between communicating if they don't understand English, your teachers are there to help you as well with that. If you don't know how to communicate really well with the students in English, or they're just not getting it, I've had multiple times where I've had my teacher honestly translate what I'm saying in English to Spanish in terms of directions and stuff, just so that they can understand it. I said, what age grades group? As I said, I have 4th grade, so it's usually between like 8 and 10 years old. And their level of English is pretty good for the most part. So they can have a couple word conversations, but it can be a struggle sometimes. So I do find myself speaking to them in Spanish when I absolutely need to. But overall, I think one of the biggest things that's helped me in my teaching experiences, in my teaching experience here, has been communicating with the teachers, communicating with other cultural assistants, language assistants, and although I said I don't really have a prep time, sometimes I like to just think of on the spot activities you can do to fill in time. I think those are the 3 main things that's helped me teach this semester.
Okay, so I teach at a vocational, I think it's called a vocational school. The youngest student's 18 and the oldest, I think she's 42. And they're there to get certified in business management. And so even though I'm working with English teachers, the English that they're teaching is business English. And so I spend 8 hours teaching in the classroom with students, and then I spend, because it's a bilingual school, I spend 8 hours only doing conversation hours with teachers so that they make sure that they stay on top of their English proficiency. The 8 hours that I spend in the classroom, I work mostly with one teacher, and we have a planning hour once a week where she tells me, okay, this week we're going to be talking about emails. So maybe you can create a PowerPoint on how to write a professional email. And then I'll make my one PowerPoint for the week and I'll present it to like 5 different classes. And that's the only preparation I have to do all week. If there's anything else that she wants me to do in the classroom, she gives me those materials. So on a normal week, I probably prep like 30 to 50 or like 30 minutes to an hour. And I usually do that on my break when I'm at school. So I really don't ever take work home unless for my conversation hours with my teachers, those are just like chit-chatting with them so that they can practice their English. But since they're like, I mean, I have one of my teachers, he's like in his 50s and he's very, very shy and it's hard to have a conversation with him. So I have to come prepared with hypothetical questions like, if you found $5,000 on the floor today, what would you do? Would you try to find the owner? Would you spend it all? So yeah, really your school, like it's going to depend on the subject you're teaching, the grades that you're teaching, and the teacher themselves on what you're going to do. But keep in mind that you're going to be assisting the teacher. So you're not going to be lesson planning for 16 hours a week. You're going to be like helping in the classroom, helping them with their, like what you said was correct, but if you say it this way, it sounds a little more natural or whatever. So don't stress about it. Okay, so I work with almost all the teachers at my school. I work with 3 English teachers in the classroom, and then I work with, I think, 12 other teachers doing conversation hours. And the dress code, like Imani said, is really casual. I wear jeans and like a nice shirt. And yeah, it's a really fun job. Just keep in mind, if they want you to be lesson planning, put your foot down and say, wait a minute, I'm an assistant.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's a very fun job. And I think the range of our responsibilities really vary on the school and the age. So I'm working with infantile. So most of my classes are 4 and 5 years old. However, I do have first grade classes and I do gym classes with 3rd graders at my school. I noticed that the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders, their level of English is much better, obviously, than 4 and 5-year-olds. But I really prefer working with the 4 and 5-year-olds. I just love them. They're so cute and their minds are so open and willing and excited to learn. My school is quite different. We don't have any textbooks and it's very hands-on and project-based. So in school, the kids are singing, they make songs, they learn dances, they do arts and crafts, they create projects, and they do these things in both Spanish and English to help them learn. So the extent of sort of what I do at work on a day-to-day basis is really sort of like some of the other panelists have said. It really depends. Sometimes day to day, the teacher will tell me when I enter a class kind of what we're doing that day and what's expected of me. But for things like Thanksgiving or Halloween, and now we're approaching Christmas, they'll tell us, hey, can you make a PowerPoint or, you know, think of a game or think of something that's traditional for you in your hometown, in your country, and can you sort of bring it to school? And I kind of get excited about stuff like that, especially with the gym class. Like I introduced Duck Duck Goose to my gym classes, and it's a hit. They love it. They love Duck Duck Goose, and they had never heard of it before. So that was super fun. And then, for example, right now with Christmas, I'm doing this like sort of side project where I'm decorating the hallway and having the kids sort of cut snowflakes out of paper, and just typical things that for those of us that are from the U.S. that we would do in grade school, in you know, kindergarten, even regarding the holidays and sort of our traditions. And I really love the job. So I have no background in teaching at all. I mean, I used to teach swim lessons and I've babysat before, but I think coming from a background of architecture and being placed at a school that is so tactile and is so based on like hands-on learning, on creating, on projects, I'm really, really thriving and I really enjoy it. And the kids get really excited about us. They get really excited when they know that they have English class. They get really excited with the sort of plans that we have for them and learning about us. And they have a million questions about who we are and what we do and if we have a boyfriend and what our hometown is like and what our friends' names are. And they get excited about practicing their English, even when, you know, their English is limited to maybe talking about the weather or how do you feel today or the days of the week. They still will say as much as they possibly can. And I think it's really exciting. I really enjoy the job. So to sort of echo what previous panelists have said, it's a really fun job and it's not, I don't want to undersell it by saying it's not hard work, but I feel like, at least in my experience, I'm not taking my work home unless it's like, you know, making a PowerPoint about Thanksgiving, or about, you know, Halloween or Christmas, which takes maybe 5-10 minutes out of my day. Yeah, so that's been my experience at my school.
Thank you. Luke, do you want to see if there's questions in the chat? Doesn't look like there's too much, and we'll probably want to go a little quicker, but yeah, Luke, can you help with that?
Yeah, I saw there was a question about hours, but I put that in the chat so folks can sort of share their experience there. Here's a great question. Among the panelists who took a TEFL course before they traveled, either the CIE course or another source, how did that help prepare them for the experience?
Yeah, I would love to elaborate this. I decided to do the TEFL course the summer before I came to Madrid, so this following summer, and I found it really critical. As someone who did not study education previously in my undergrad, I felt like it equipped me with a lot more tools to understand the learning style and also just to gauge how to approach different levels. That has been probably the hardest part of my experience, is that I work with students that range from their first time learning English to, you know, B2, C1, so like high, intermediate, advanced students. And often they can be in a class together. And I found that my TEFL course really prepared me well to be able to give, you know, a mixture of levels, the tools and resources they need while making sure they're all met. So I would recommend, if you have the time and money, but if you do have previous education experience, like I have another friend here who, you know, studied undergrad, I don't know if it's fully worth it, but I have heard from a lot that it does give you a lot more job opportunities if you plan to work in other European countries as well. So I'd recommend it if you don't have any education experience.
Okay.
And just to follow up on, sorry, that
Go
I
ahead.
just stopped
Yes,
that
yes.
question. It's not mandatory. No, the TEFL course is completely optional. You have to pay for it, and it's, correct me if I'm wrong, is it a 10-week course, a 9-week course? So you do have to factor in, but no, honestly, most of the people I've met here aren't TEFL certified. So that's been my experience.
Yes, totally right. So it's our CIE course is a 150-hour program over a 10-week course. It's required in places like South Korea. So for folks who are thinking of starting in one country and maybe teaching abroad in multiples, it can be a useful investment. Or for folks who feel like they want more preparation if they don't have relevant experience before stepping into this role in Spain. It's an online course, start dates every 2 weeks, so it's pretty flexible and optional for Spain, as you said. We do also have a 60-hour course, which is kind of a slimmed down introduction. I think that one has a price point of $300, but less useful for going to countries like Korea where it's required, but still gives a decent introduction to TEFL for folks who don't have that background. And I think we're ready for our last topic. Lauren, do you want to tee it up?
Yeah, so our last one, because I do want to be mindful of the people over in Spain who are probably hungry or, wanting to go. But we'll quickly go over public transportation. We can just feel free to go quick and summarize your experience.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, guys. So a little bit about public transportation. So Madrid is a big city, but it is very well connected through the metro system, the bus system, and the Renfe or Cercanías, which is like a commuter train. So basically, as a participant, I'm pretty sure it's always recommended that you get the abono. The abono, I actually have it here for you guys to see. Looks like this, right? So my face is on it, has my name. This is a monthly card that you refill. It's if you're under the age of 26, it is 20 euros a month. Then after your 26th birthday, when you go to refill it, it will be a different price based on the zone and I guess the distance of how far you're traveling. But again, if you're under the age of 26, it'll be 20 euros a month, which is honestly a great deal for what you're getting. The abono card, this one, is valid for the metro, the bus, and the cercanías. So I applied for it last year. All I had to do, CIE sent out I think the course that we take prior to coming, which was on Canvas, it was through an email. They sent out the link that where you just went to the link, you clicked it, you filled out the application, and then you were able to make an appointment. And you had to bring some paperwork that they outlined for you, maybe 3 things at most: your passport. I had to bring a small picture, a passport size photo. And I was able to go directly into one of their main offices, which I went to Plaza de Castilla, and they gave me my card. Not every metro station has an office where they where they make these, but the big hubs tend to have them. It's definitely something you'd want to hold on to. I had some friends who studied abroad in Madrid in prior years, and it's valid. They just had to go to the machine and refill it. Let's see. I know some people fill out an application and get it mailed to their house. I was told that it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get it mailed to your apartment in Madrid. Let's see. Let's talk about the metro. So the metro here runs until about 2 to 2:30 in the morning. Correct me if I'm wrong. It runs all day. So a lot of people who live outside the city center and can't walk home at night, like on a weekend out past 2:30, because nightlife here does run really late. So how would you get home? Of course, there's Uber. There are city bikes, which I think someone mentioned earlier, which are really awesome. There's a monthly fee for that. There's scooters that you rent by the minute. And as far as nighttime goes, when the metro is closed, there's something called the Buo, which is the bus that runs all through the night. I have a friend who takes that. She lives just outside of the centro. And basically the Buo runs on main streets like Gran Via. She uses Google Maps and Google Maps and Apple Maps to figure out where the Buo bus will be. She said it's very safe. At night, there's even sometimes security on the bus. It's normally packed with people too, so you won't feel alone or it shouldn't be scary. It's always in a very centralized area. And yeah, personally, I love to use the Lime scooters, but there's a bunch of brands, and these are these electric scooters that you'll see people going around in Madrid. A few of the brands or companies that have these are Lime, Bolt, Bird, To Go, Spin, and Link. I have all of the apps because sometimes they run promotions. So that's something to keep your eye out for. So sometimes the price per minute varies. And yeah, as far as transportation goes, that was my experience.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on something that you said, Adam, about having the abono delivered. That is a route that I chose, and I actually wouldn't suggest it because it took quite a while to get my abono. And before I had the abono, I work in a town, I mean, it's still in Madrid, but it's about via public transportation about an hour away in Arroyo Molinos. And without the abono, I would have to pay individually each time I took the bus to get to the metro. So I think the abono process, definitely see if you can pick it up in the office. I don't know where folks are from sort of in this webinar, but I'm from Philadelphia, and in general, I feel like East Coast, Philadelphia, New York, DC, transportation, it can be a little sketchy, it can be a little unreliable. I feel like I have the opposite experience here. I feel very safe on the metro and on the buses. I actually really enjoy commuting because it helps me feel more like a local, especially commuting to work in the morning. The trains, the buses, the metro, I have to say, especially being from Philadelphia, are so clean, like so clean that it blows my mind how well maintained these systems are and how efficient they are. So, but in terms of like in Centro, like in the center of the city, I love to walk, and the city is so walkable in Center City. One more thing, my personal opinion is that Google Maps is the superior sort of wayfinding app. Also, Move It is a good app, but Google Maps tends to work better in Europe than Apple Maps does. Finally, there's one more app that if you've studied abroad in Europe, you may know of. It's called Free Now. It's a taxi app that works sort of similarly to Uber, where you can request a taxi on your phone, pay for it via your phone, via having, you know, Apple Pay or your card, however, and you can kind of call a car, have it come to wherever you are, and the taxis are incredibly cheap, and via the Free Now app, it tends to be much more discounted, and I think a lot cheaper than Uber's. So I actually always use the Free Now app, and I don't even use Uber over here if you ever need to take a car as opposed to public transportation. But yeah, I love the metro and the bus here. It's very efficient.
I would also like to add that the Abono card, if you're 26 or older, is more expensive. It's 50 euros a month. And so I live in the center, well, a little bit below the center. And so I only use the metro like on the weekends, and it's cheaper for me to refill my metro card during the month than to pay for the Abono card, which is unlimited, because I don't use the metro that much. I refill it maybe 3 times, and it's 12 euros every time, which gives you 10 rides when you refill it. And so maybe the first month you're here, if you're over 26, like take a month to figure out, do I need to pay 50 euros a month for the Abono card, or would it be cheaper for me to just pay for the refill of the 10 trip metro card? And also the Metro Madrid app, I highly, highly recommend it. It will tell you how to connect different metros. So like you need to go to the Seoul stop, and from there you'll take the metro, you'll take, I don't know, whatever, line 6. I don't think the line 6 goes in the Seoul stop, but it'll take you to this other stop. And from there you connect to line 5 or whatever, and it'll take you there. So download the Metro Madrid app if you come here and you want to use the metro, because it will make using the metro in this city so much easier.
Okay, thank you. We can do some of the Q&A. I'm gonna just go to our last slide. While maybe Luke, if you want to sift through the last questions. We are accepting applications for next fall. And that little QR code is our Instagram, which you can see actually some of our panelists, Alfonsina and Amira, have done some great stories for us in our highlights. And Luke, do you want to chime in with any last minute questions that are up there?
Sure thing. We've got someone who is curious to hear the panelists talk about cleanliness and safety. Is Madrid a safe place at night? Tips for safety, perhaps particularly for single people who aren't going with friends. What has that experience been like?
As someone who's also from a big city, such as Los Angeles, Madrid is incredibly safe in comparison. I think Adam mentioned this, but it's very common to stay out very late because a lot of like clubs and discotecas, they close at 6. So people will literally stay up all night and will be walking around at all hours of the day. And I'm talking people who are in their 20s to even older people. So I personally have never felt like I've walked like an hour home once at 5 a.m. and I felt completely safe. So I wouldn't worry about your safety while you're here. And yes, it is so clean. I also noticed, because I noticed like on that hour walk in the early morning, they even have these big trucks that go through the streets and spray water along the sidewalks in the city just to clean it, like just regular streets. And they do that rather frequently. It's just, yeah, it's just very clean. And I feel like coming from a big city in the US, it's definitely not the same. So it's very clean and it's very safe.
Yeah, I gotta second that. As a single woman here in Madrid, I feel safer in Madrid than I ever felt in Philadelphia. And when it comes to the cleaning of the streets, they wash the streets with soap and water, and it blows my mind. I find it so beautiful and so great. But yeah, I walk around alone all the time at night, and I mean, I'm already kind of a city person, so of course, have your wits about you, be cautious. Be aware of your surroundings at all times. But people in Madrid are truly so friendly. And something that I want to add when it comes to language, my Spanish is not super good. It's getting better every day, and I'm practicing every day. But being someone that isn't a native Spanish speaker, I have people are so kind about, working with you if your Spanish is bad, or helping you if you don't understand. People I feel like are just really friendly here. And I really enjoy sort of the kindness of this city. So it really is one of my favorite cities in the world.
Okay, I just wanted to take back one thing that I said. It is very safe, but as Amira said, you do want to be smart. There are hotspots like Seoul, where people might have their things stolen, especially if they know that you're a tourist. But I feel like honestly, most of that happens during the day when it's very crowded. So just as long as you have one hand on your things, and you just be aware of your surroundings, you're safe. But that's like with any city. Just be smart, and you shouldn't have anything. You shouldn't have anything to worry about.
Okay. I think we're pretty much closing in on the end. I'm always blown away by our current participant panelists. You folks are stars. Thank you so much for going through all these questions and participating in this event. So I'll just say a big thank you to you all. It's been amazing. Lauren, if you want to close out with a quick summary of application deadlines and 60 seconds on what the next steps are if somebody wants to do the program, I think we'll be just about ready to wrap up.
Yeah, for next fall, application deadline is March 1st, but we are actually beginning to review and start acceptance now. So if you are interested, we're working on looking at next year already. So March 1st deadline. To apply, you can send us an email at teachinspain@CIEE, or you can go to our website, which I actually do not have linked on this slide. But more information if you just email us, and we can help you start your application or answer questions about the application. Yeah, I think that's about it. We do have some time till that deadline, but getting you on board early can help a lot with just prepping, because there's a lot that goes into it in the pre-departure process. But yeah, thank you also to all you panelists who are there late in Spain, but they eat dinner later in Spain anyway. So I'm sure you guys are fine at this point, right? So thank you, everyone. And email us if you have questions. Yeah, Amira, what time do you guys eat dinner?
We eat dinner. People eat dinner at like 8, 9 o'clock. It's some places don't even have their kitchens open until 8 o'clock. So
yeah, see you guys. We can chat another hour or two. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be sending out a recording and follow-up email to everyone who registered. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, guys. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Good luck.
And Anita, if you're still here, I just sent you my email to answer one of your questions about the experience of African-American person in Madrid. I have a lot to say about it. So check the Q&A answered and email me. I can talk to you more about it. All right, yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.